Hi, I'm Phil D'Agostino, your guide to naked thinking. In the last video, I talked about what naked thinking actually is. But what we want to do now is to focus on when you have naked thinking, what do I mean when I say that you apply cognitive behavioral principles? What are cognitive behavioral principles and how do you apply them? What do you do with them? And why do you care? And how can they help you? Well, you've all heard about cognitive behavioral therapy or rational emotive therapy, and there are a whole lot of different kinds of similar sounding things referring to therapy. But they come down to a few basic principles. The first principle about cognitive behavioral anything is that your cognition, which means the way you think, and your behavior, that obviously is what you wind up doing, are very, very closely related to each other. Now there are people that don't really give a lot of thought to some of the things that they do. And that's me too. I mean, everybody does that sometimes. That's not what I mean. I don't mean that, you're out there doing stuff without even giving it any thought. I don't mean that. But I mean, we do a lot of things during the course of a day or whatever, where we say something to someone or something, and we don't give it a lot of real conscious thought. We just do it. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're driving down the street. Have you ever had this happen? You're driving down the street and all of a sudden you go, how did I get here? The last 10 minutes of your driving is completely oblivious to you. You have no recollection of it. Does that mean you weren't thinking? Well, you were thinking, of course you were, but you were on kind of autopilot. Now, when we say cognitive behavioral, you see, you were acting in a manner that was consistent with the way that your unconscious mind has you trained to behave. But as far as making decisions go, you really want to be in the driver's seat, so to speak. You want to have your eyes open, your mind open, and you want to be thinking critically. You want to be asking, do I want to do this and why? Do I want to do that and why? Why not? You want to ask yourself all those critical questions. Now, in cognitive behavioral anything, the principle is essentially that the way you think serves you best when it's based on reality. Now, there are a lot of ways that a person's mind can actually have them believing things that aren't really reality-based. The word rational has to do with reality-based thinking, or a person's really connecting to what is rather than what they believe it might be, could be, should be, ought to be, or afraid that it could be or might be or whatever. And the bottom line is, there are many people that get themselves very, very upset, not over what is being said or what is being done, which is the reality, but over what they think could be behind what's being said or what's being done, or et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's what I mean by a cognitive behavioral principle. What we want to do with naked thinking, and the way that we use these principles in naked thinking, is to get away from the emotion to the degree that we can, and clearly think in terms of reality-based thinking. So that when we do evaluate something, when we do think about what is right or wrong about doing a certain action plan or whatever, that we have the reality of what we're looking at driving those thoughts rather than the fear, the concerns, or whatever. There are many different ways that a person can distort their thinking. As a matter of fact, there are things called cognitive distortions that have been listed many places, and I have them listed on my site too as well. But what we want to talk about just for a few more minutes is that this cognitive idea of connecting with reality and asking yourself the questions about the reality of, for example, what am I having to deal with? What is it that I might do? What would the result be if I did that versus something else? Any number of things that allow us to plan, judge, and all that kind of thing. That happens best when it's reality-based. We call it rational thinking. Albert Ellis, a psychologist who became famous in the 1950s, he talked about rational emotive therapy. And in his case, like cognitive behavioral therapy, we start with what do you think, and how you think drives how you feel. But how you feel changes how you think. So once you start getting yourself in that spiral, what happens is one causes the other, which is causing the other, and the next thing you know, you're doing something, saying something or not, and then an hour later, you're thinking to yourself, man, if I had only said this, or if I had only said that. And you see, that's what cognitive behavioral principles being put into action now when you need it can do for you.